If you decide to think from the social kind of moving out there with like some people, and then they want to put things in the work. It made very clear that some of the reasons that they have. This is actually going real with it. But is there actually consider that would be more prudent in this government?
Well, in the legislation, it's pending on Congress, secondary sanctions against purchases of oil that they elected, China, India, other countries, and there. Purchasing oil, probably in violation of U.S. and EU sanctions, could be the targets. However, I must say, sanctions have largely failed to prevent Russia from continuing the war. The European package we're considering is their 17th package of sanctions. Now, one question is, if they could find that many sanctions, why weren't they imposed in February of 2022 when the war started? This kind of gradual escalation of economic sanctions obviously doesn't work, and the Russians will take advantage of it. Well, I think I would go for the secondary sanctions and really get tough, and including saying to NATO, we've wasted 3 years not supplying military systems to the fashion. We have been deterred by these Russian threats of a wider war. That's over. We're going to have a strategy now that will regain full sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. I don't expect Trump to do it. That's the right thing. If you're living with moderate to severe black arthritis, symptoms can not hold you back. Right now, it's our legal. Then you can be explained to appear to change. It's got reason. Because if you're not able to hear it, the story of the record is we can help you to intend to firmly and to got to review your 4 doses a year after 2 starter dates. It's got risen. You're not with clearer skin and that made everything. That's not very outside. You should say that. That's serious. The game, you know what? You go down the stage and go off the field. Situation. Donald Trump threatened 50%. And then knows the time. He called the president and he delayed the tariffs so much for the ladder. Did you say also get up for he wants to trade one rather than himself feeling? And you find out in the coffee again. You go to that, find out, but necessarily intelligence power in the let's say that's first logic. This on this day, the person 18 hours with that. The end of this day is wins. Run off the country's result. It's days and we were talking to distribute this. And look, the next film president, I don't have to work out, but I only got times as you have to play the melody. You're getting here. It's difficult, but what will make the perform the speed of the film? Oh, really, you're making that reality. The only thing I would say about it
is that there isn't one thing in the federal. It's the reason behind the small U.S. company based in St. Louis has eight total employees based in the U.S. We are the ones doing the tariff if we want to bring our deals into the U.S. So therefore, really, I mean, particularly real sort of doing deals in the U.S. And it's significant for us to protect companies like mine, small businesses like mine, pursuing up Wall Street against executive.
Finland. And President Xi, for this weekend, said, starting again, and he's going, it's crazy. You
Numerous occasions, and I think there's always a strategy behind what Putin does, and that strategy is a strategy of delay. While we're speaking, he continues his war of aggression in Ukraine, and we're talking about at least 5,000 dead or wounded soldiers per day. So if that's defined as crazy, then so be it.
You mentioned your many conversations with President Trump. I know you had a surprise visit with him in Mar-a-Lago this spring, and you played golf. I know you're an extremely good golfer. So he then posted a picture of you. He was praising your golf skills. Obviously, that was just before tariffs, but even after the tariffs were announced, Mr. President, you sat next to some of that pilgrimage to his funeral. So how often do you
Well, you know, I've had the opportunity to obviously meet him on a few occasions and then speak over the phone fairly regularly. And, you know, it's normal diplomatic exchanges of ideas. And I'm glad that I can do that because if you understand, I come from a small country, and whenever the president of a small country is able to speak with the president of the United States, it's a good part of our diplomacy.
a small country, but a crucial country, and you have the longest land border with Russia in Europe. So when you talk about Putin, he speaks, right? About 830 years we're showing it here. Right now, Putin is building his military on the Finland border. So what are you seeing him do along your border right now?
Well, I mean, we Finns are cool, calm, and collected. And sometimes when you see things in the international media, it's a little bit twisted. We have the border under full control. Russia has always had military bases along our border. And there's a normal buildup. You have to remember that 4 brigades were moved from the Leningrad military district when the war began in Ukraine. And the expectation is that there will be a buildup after the war is over, and that buildup will continue. And, you know, the reason is very simple. The largest militaries in Europe, together with Turkey, Ukraine, and Poland. And on top of that, we have just doubled NATO's border. So that's normal Russian activity. We have obligatory military service, 100,000 men and women who have done it. We have we just bought 64 F-35s. We have the largest artillery in Europe together with Poland. And I keep on saying, we don't have it because we're worried about Sweden. We have it because we want to create a deterrent against Russia. So, you know, one of the borders that the French or anyone else should be least worried about is the Finnish border. We put it here, we got this, and especially we got this with our allies.
You talk about defending that border. One of the most common excuses for Putin's invasion of Ukraine is this, right? So if Ukraine hadn't wanted to join NATO, Putin wouldn't have invaded, right? It's a propaganda that comes out of Moscow. It is also what we hear from some politicians, frankly, including President Trump, who made this exact point. Serious.
I believe that's the reason the war's still there. Because Biden went out and said that they joined NATO, and he said they said it.
So they say NATO's on Russia's border. That's why Putin invaded. You can't have NATO along the river. But again, to make the point, you've got the largest land border with Russia, and you in NATO. So what do you say to those people who will explain and excuse Putin's invasion using the NATO?
There's always 2 answers on that. The first one is that I don't think Finland would have joined NATO. For Finland and Ukraine are different history. Now, the second reason is that Putin made one of the biggest strategic and tactical mistakes in recent military history. He underestimated the the power of the Ukrainian army. He overestimated his own army, and he underestimated the resolve of the unity of the West. Look, what was he trying to do? He was trying to make Ukraine Russian. Well, it became European. He tried to split the European Union. I've never seen it more united. He tried to split the transatlantic partnership, and especially NATO. And he ended up with neutral Sweden and Finland joining NATO. So you could perhaps argue that whatever he made was a colossal mistake.
President, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. It is time for today's business leader. This is our series where we talk with small business owners from coast to coast about President Trump's tariffs. Several have been in favor of the tariffs. Many are feeling uncertain and overwhelmed. Today, we're heading to Denver, Colorado, to American-Made Apparel. That's a manufacturing company that produces clothing for college bookstores nationwide. President and owner Sunny Kim is joining me now. And Sunny, the argument from Trump administration officials for these tariffs, in part, is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. from abroad. You work in manufacturing here in the United States, and you're still being impacted by the tariffs. Tell us about your experience.
Oh, right. As far as sourcing goes, we try as much as we can to try and get everything that we need from local markets, but eventually down that supply chain, there's going to be somewhere along the line that's going to be affected by Chinese tariffs, because let's say if I'm trying to source fabric from California, it is a mill that's located there, but they themselves have to buy in yarn that is basically used and bought in from China to make five-blend goods, and that is an ongoing product that I need to carry for my clients. So somewhere along the line that we've developed these supply chains over many years, obviously that it takes time to get used to be working with people and establishing that's correct.
So how are you handling these tariffs? Are you being forced to raise prices to your customers?
Trying to hedge against so much difference in price, I just stocked up on a lot of the products that I carry for fabrics and trends, just so that I can at least pull down my prices now, but it's definitely going to affect me as these prices keep going in. And you really don't know. It's kind of a waiting game. So I'm trying to move my prices to my clients at the wholesale level so that I can do retail level for them. They're not being interested in kind of giving away that some 21 they're sourcing some part of it from China.
Are the tariffs actually translating into more demand for you? Because, I mean, you are an American manufacturing company. Theoretically, that should be nice.
So we have been getting inquiries online. So we've dealt with a lot of actually big companies that are currently manufacturing products overseas, especially in China. And I think it's more of a data collection element now because they just want to find out if our prices are even going to be competitive. It has opened kind of doors for people to understand that, hey, maybe offering a U.S. line of goods is something to consider, especially since it's so volatile trying to source in from China now. So at least it's opened a little bit of avenue of opportunity, but at this point, we haven't landed any type of deals that ensure ongoing production and ongoing business with them. It's just more of like quoting a lot of people.
That's interesting. Do you think there's anything the federal government could do or should do so that a business like yours that does manufacture in the United States can grow and take advantage of this opportunity?
So the disparity between U.S. labor versus what Chinese laborers are paid. For example, for a skilled worker on my end, I might be paying $18 per hour for someone to be running on the line, but workplace pricing of $1.56 on average that I looked up for a Chinese sewer to be sewing the same thing. So price point one, I can compete with any of that. But you know, as far as being able to forward with a positive attitude, is it's like, all right, well, if I do land some products that are completely US made, people on the consumer level have to expect that they have to pay more for it and be welcoming. So the two tests would have to be at the consumer level, are they willing to pay higher prices for potentially the same thing?
All right. Well, the company is called American Made Apparel. American Made Apparel. It's in Denver, Colorado, and the business leader is Sunny King. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. You wish folks so nice in a humble abode of the fourth billionaire again. This is exactly why I think I'm here together by a quartet of billionaire brosists to turn in this fire drama. Mentioned that the smartest men in America, and we literally have the resources to take over the world. We manage great foreign wealth and feel that he can sort of circumvent the inevitable. And that really plays into his attitude and his demeanor over this weekend. I think like all tech entrepreneurs, he's really seeking this insatiable growth for his company, for his own person, for himself. My character as well, is looking at himself and having played the mental health and what kind of I have for, and maybe this is the me being effective. At the top of the film, I release the speed of new content tools, and people are using those for nefarious purposes, causing economic and political turmoil. Who could actually do this? Yeah, letters here everywhere. Every single sober day, we think of the third mountain Vista Farm. Mountain Vista Farm is a place where you can find a new life. Please hop on the beach.
Mountain Vista Farm gave me a box and self-defense.
And Mountain Vista Farm today. I think his sensitive seeds, they also want water things. They have to make a choice, one versus the other. Sensodyne Clinical White provides 2 shades wider teeth as well as providing 24/7 teeth. Patients are going to love the seeds.
Something a new life again. Something more investment. Over around a day. My degree in the US. Obviously, it's not inexpensive. A whole sector. So this is education, certain level of universities, venerable institutions, seen as universities are pushing people more towards trade schools, and like that says towards trade schools in the US. That's starting to emerge as a narrative, which is interesting, and that's much more about things.
Your guess
Especially was in town. Correspondence center weekend. Your face to people. We're talking. You actually spoke. This is part of and Todd quickly. Somewhere it's interesting because Trump has Treasury that's going to be difficult for us coming into the midterms. I mean, that is a very interesting time. In terms of and not her vote, starting to show again that frustration. Interesting that they don't talk directly about each other. Donald Trump comment very much of late on social media about perhaps the relationships falling a little bit. They're not willing to go into outright direct criticism in the way they most of each other. And Policymakers also had as investors, we see as always, there's a little bit of your busy schedule. I want to talk about inflation. I want to talk in general about the conundrum that central banks are now. Still at the City Council. What would you do to brief? So would you please see other things?
Inflation is coming. Inflation for gold. Beginning because of this. So I think interest rates can come down.
Firefighters, four victims, including a child from under a vehicle. 65 people injured. Police say 50 of them taken to hospital. 11 of them remain there, they say, for treatment. They describe their condition as recovering. The British Prime Minister among many.
And the whole country, with all of those who were affected, Liverpool stand together, and the whole country stands dignity.
The police now do seem to have a good sense of how this happened and who was responsible, less so why. But what is clear, it's going to be long after this police tape comes down, the crime scene is cleared, the street is open before the people of Liverpool can really come to terms with the terrible tragedy that unfolded here. Nick Robertson, CNN, Liverpool.
Yeah, and no one likes to hear news like this, but let me talk you through it. There may be some potential treatment for him. This is something known as normal pressure hydrocephalus. Now, hydrocephalus may be a term people are familiar with. They think about water on the brain. Typically think about that happening in babies, but it can happen in adults as well. And so let me show you these images here to get an idea of what this looks like. In an adult brain, you have normal fluid spaces. On the left, that's what the brain should look like. That's normal. On the right, you can see those black areas in the middle. So those are the ventricles, and they carry stable spinal fluid. And you can see that they're much larger in the scan on the right. That is normal pressure and hydrocephalus. And so this with their bladder control, sometimes it is confused. Things like most or even taking from them, and so it's not common, but it's a lot of other neuro sort of diseases out there. You know, the area that is kind of there. So that's created around the brain. The needle and do all the windhouse. The needle in the lower back and brain. When you drain some bacteria, I think rapidly get that, including their juice, their walking, including their cognition. Then we can do something that's a bit more experimental. So this is the brain. You basically would put a catheter sort of through the brain into one of those fluid-filled spaces I mentioned, and then using a catheter sort of drain that fluid into the abdomen, for example. That's called a cup, something else that people may have heard of. And I gotta tell you, this is rare, but when it comes to someone and what Billy Bill is describing, it could potentially be a very suitable strategy. I think that's what they're hoping for. I'm sure he's having those discussions with his doctors right now. Jennifer Lopez is heading back to Vegas for an up-all-night residency at the Coliseum at Caesars Palace is set to kick off December 30th. The 4 shows that week and 8 more in March 2026. Here.
Captain America Brave New World director Julius Anoff says he jumped at the chance to helm a Marvel movie and to work with Star. And his experience in the stage, even Broadway and across the US, something like that. To get was really something very special to me. Captain America Brave New World debuts today on Disney Plus. It took 2 years after Leonard Skinner launched Freebird, there's finally an official music video. The man giving his old motorcycle to a fan, and the song and word in Hollywood.
This kind of particular, where we need to build the capital markets, where we need to have players, European players, and this is actually a very strange area.
And freedom of speech, but you could just the American public broadcaster of the and we are told the president actually respectful retaliation and selfish. President public radio, who wins? And this is related to Harvard, it's related to school, which sometimes been taking. Certainly power after there's never would have been. In this case, Congress owes this money for NPR, public radio, TV office in the United States. Congress controls the budget in the first place. Trump is going to come in and say, you can slash up funding, forget about Congress, just get rid of the money. We've already seen one lawsuit filed, whatever, the NGA in the month, and now NPR going to say that I'm a civil. You got to highlight what the local impact would be. The same judges oversee just do as well as the negative comparing companies to do, and so independent studies are this whole rule. Certainly, even if he set up NPR, he does not have it. It's going to you. He's kind of salt and institution. How much consider they are here it's a very interesting way to think. Right? We're talking all day about power. We're saying that struggle for power. We come out as much as we can. If these are Mr. looking back in various ways, it's not coming out at all. NPR paid the penalty just for having to go out and get lawyers and just for having to drive the president. It makes the network look more at the point of view. Even NPR denies all those charges of bias. They say they're not right or left. They're just trying to cover the news. This game was because places like Harvard now NPR did not go looking to fight the President Trump. They didn't see the athletes fight. Now that they're in it, they have to try to win. there are few images and it's more of volume. The core of the dictionary is on long run have played some of the most memorable matches. But the tournament hasn't always been played on clay. From its inception in 1891, the French Open alternated between clay and rock. It was used with current locations. David titled The Arena was named now, not because of athletes, but 20 years in the hills in World War One. The idea of originated in twin brothers and William Renshaw, who both reached world number one, and this substance was a glass court that was struggling to. These days, however, the clay used at Roland Garros is very made up of steel. The French Open are in fact created using 5 layers. The bottom is made up of stones and how it is drainage. The second crushed.
But in the prelude to local elections, the Democrats are used to use them as important and that's what I think. There's music in the markets. If you want to
Residue and the core crushed white limestone. The top layer, only 1 to 2 millimeters thick, is made of red brick. It's a very building this whole amazing of the famous red maintain the full morning and matches and resembles the broken neck. What line? This is not the ground
sort of a double dip. Here because from something that's H2O. Hear more about eager anticipation here. Price swing of cash parked on the side. I think so. I turn. Pricing was trade tensions after President Trump announced an extension of the new tariff deadline because now fewer open highlights sometimes there's appetite and there's things good.
It was a big deal. And instead, judges revealed continuous felonies even if there's one season over. It's a rule that our next chance. Second place. Second round, tiebreaker. And here was the fourth time, and that's what I'm telling you. No, but it this is the fourth go. So tell us about some of the experience.
My second question is, once I definitely focus more on those and so in fact, yeah, you see this growing I got to say, but the sell off is really this year I focus more on that. Preparation and using no what does it look like? Who's putting you? What do you tell? Use Google Sheets to track down the words and then type it like any words that I missed or words that I can quickly. And I just have my parents take my numbers with them. A day, a week,
Testifying.
so per day, I would say 5 to 6 on weekdays, 3 to 8 on weekends. So yeah, it's pretty intense. What do you think you do anyway? How do you feel about this change to the sunlight?
I think there are important about reflected evaluations and the European equity markets they trade with a valuation of about that's not cheap relative to history, but certainly very cheap relative to the US. There's a
I really like
starting to see a shift in things in a basis in dollars. We're starting to get better returns in European. There are areas in the value spaces which really interesting to investors. And so I think there are selective and really interesting opportunities for being investors.
What are you expecting in terms of
Well, I think there are clearly sort of currency translation effects increasing capital earnings, given the likely probability that the dollar continues to moderate against both sterling and the euro. But I think that we're still going to see relatively weak figures on both sides of the Atlantic this year, but most likely avoiding recession. And when you think about the prospects for monetary policy and fiscal policy margin across Europe and those cheap evaluations, I think that there's growing opportunities for investors who may have been neglecting it because there was so much activity happening in the US itself. No, US offers selectively very interesting opportunities. With that market, investors should be their exposure across different sectors and not focusing purely on the biggest things, which have been the dominant drivers for the last few years.
Again, the money, putting capital to work, and you have options that you did 15 years, 20 years ago. How does that complicate actually the space?
In a way, it's another opportunity for diversification, diversifying not just across asset classes, but across public and private markets. And I think that's a good thing because it gives people a broader set of different types of assets and different structures. And I think that private markets are going to continue to grow significantly. And the opportunities to scale and grow businesses in private markets for longer is clearly still very much in the and I think you'll see a growing institutionalization of these markets, which are very attractive.
Very fast.
terms of profits in that industry. But it is beginning to wind out. Clearly, there's some competition coming. We've seen that in China already this year and in other places. I think that's a good thing because it's going to accelerate adoption and take technologies like AI to create the services
in the criticism of the Israeli government, the more is that the country is coming from strength and support. Because all day long this war and October 8th, after Mount committed to not October 7 and kidnapped more than 350 people and killed and murdered more than 12 in Israel. And Israelis don't take seriously that kind of activity. What we saw on the college campuses, in some of the demonstrations, Israelis are immune to that. We assume that these people are against us. But when we hear friendly government and people like the region or like President Trump, who are supportive and friendly with us, we call states beyond the line. It's too much. Just have to stop. That has an impact. In Israel, and it's calculated to the Israeli government. But still, the real question remains: will these words be followed by any action? If we were the first, then Netanyahu will fall the block. If in the words there is also an intention of action, then we will see this actually having an impact on how the war is operated.
As you say, Canada and France, about the threat of cases even including targeted sanctions, we've had also used for years. It's not hard to well. But we haven't seen the response yet. But we are starting to think through this. One question is Canada and France, especially it's very frustrating when we have your party and we definitely on the we do the best way to do it. It's not the opposite.
Personally, I deal with the relations for President and mentioned that Europe, and the UK, and Canada, and Australia, and other countries do have influence, and do have leverage, and the United States for these governments, and the Europe, smaller than the US, they have a lot of influence and leverage. The question is whether they do regarding personally, how committed are they actually but President Trump and many of their administration to but and the most important question is how are the negotiators to help you being conducted? Is it now setting the terms of the negotiation, or is with President Trump or anyway setting the terms of the negotiation? So far, the way I see it, will be conversations we're hearing, and also all the statements coming from the administration. It's pretty clear that despite their disappointment, despite their frustration, the administration is still running and the skills of the strategic affairs minister, Ron Dermer, is the terms of the negotiations. And my analysis is that until this changes, we will not see a deal after the country.
I mean, very interesting. To get back to the despite you saying these started to see not everything Palestinians could come to Israel. We have actually a lot from Prime Minister of Israel and came out and speakers like especially Palestine Rose said we have two military OPED in correct. You don't know. We do have to be Iran, the leader of the Democrats, we said that Netanyahu is
I know.
No, I don't think we prevent significant change in the internal reserves on the field. If anything, you see a lot of anger, tenure, and other changes. I think the more we taking dynamic is actually Israelis and more attuned to what they're hearing can from the allies, from the government. If anything, we drive a change that is real policy. In the sense that we are spending a little after 20 months of war, and of course, what most people believe, right among them, considered the most terms is, important war in the history of the country. The world is very difficult. Because it's been so long, because it's definitely high, because there is a sense that the Netanyahu government is no longer fighting for the youth. After the servant was a war that Israel and the region Brazilian fight to the elite from a youth Nigerian civilians who are sitting on their bed or from dance music festival. But now there is a period of the country and it is the main reason why we mainly
a year ago, and it's in Europe, as the electric vehicle maker faces the challenges they're going to face from Chinese EV manufacturers over CEO involvement in right-wing politics. Being a business and economics reporter, and I think joining me now from London. So when we look at this, what are the main reasons for you experience during that? Well, I think you touched on two of the biggest issues. The first one being the conspiracy surrounding swirling Elon Musk at the US. There's not a pitch who has co-led the Department of Government Statistics in the US, who has spearheaded a campaign of mass layoffs of federal workers. This is also probably backed far-right parties in Europe, in Germany, in the United Kingdom. And so it's no surprise that employees are turned away from him. There have been protests on both sides of the Atlantic. There have been reports of this is all the rumblings at the same time that has been information. For the first time in a long time, only data dynamics, data firm. The fact that this
yeah, so I think we first of all, I mean, we should talk about this. We started mid last year and we had time to drastically reset our focus over the last 6 months. So we cut over 35,000 million our growth funding, and we ended up using the equipment things like that, just so we can try to conserve some of our capital so we can weather whatever is coming to us usually through the right now.
Have you had to raise costs on customers? So we had
yeah, so far what we've been able to absorb with the impacts that we've seen because they are trickling into what we're
really experiencing the most difficulty with right now is actually we have four students that we have to there. All four of them have been out for the last 3 weeks, and every week we're in order for the computer and that product becoming product. So we're actually seeing more than right now. And to go out there and
With community being so central, the more you show your business, you can notice the community as Conterra becomes its own economic uncertainty concerns.
yeah, so we're individuals, we're copies, very easy to people. We have done a lot of work with those community in Chapel. So we're still relatively steady. What is personal with this game is we're seeing in maybe the that one. Under daily we're still seeing it. I think a lot of that is 2 months ago. There's a lot of people that share what things happen. Where they can, to really leverage that.
Have you been able to make strangers withhold some money even if you think side things, trusting side of things? How can you do that?
And to be always transparent, like the reason why we were able to do this year investing in higher retirement, I had a career from 401k. I did money on all the table. So we the gray is the only way to I think it's able to generate a lot of the states that I really need to make sure that administration are ready. So it is
What is the lawmakers? What would you tell them if they're listening?
We need stability, whether it be for him or for agencies. We need to know what the plans are. In this middle of the year, that's typically a more orders that would be really good circumstances. I'm doing because of that instability. So stability is going to be the main thing that really needs when it comes to figuring out how to adjust our small businesses and having corporate finance activity. Really decide whether you can raise my prices, but you can start making to wages for hours with you make so the only area that is impacting and ability to see the here.
If you're a great town, if you're in City of Rick Road office, in that town, maybe really think you're trying to
Prime Minister, I'm looking at you back on the show. Let's start with that decision that we saw from Chancellor Merz just in the last 24 hours to remove restrictions on those long-range weapons. Do you think this will use for Ukraine realistically?
Yeah. But it comes
Um,
your word.
I think it's going over to it. I think Ukraine has a choice. So the from the one who started off with the team. There's a different country target. More than 10 years of that. So finally, some of the so let's get the right weapons in Ukraine. Let's make sure that we can totally defend ourselves. Because that is the best way the future will to get Russia to team. The other two is make sure that we NATO, we nationally invest sufficient amounts in terms of money, but also capabilities in defense and maintain the strong transatlantic relationship. And the second pillar is indeed weakening Russia. You mentioned sanctions before. It's not only sanctions, they say about the technology and conceptual. So making Ukraine strong, stronger, making sure it can defend yourself, is defending yourself. That is a weak thing.
Working for
Let's talk about pressure then, because as we heard, earlier we taken a little clip from President Trump, he seems at least to show that he's increasingly frustrated with President Putin, who has been so interesting to that meeting with President Zelensky. Trump saying today that Putin is considered playing his fine. That suggests at all to you that President Putin, the President Trump is saying President Putin for what he is? How do you interpret his words? And the shift in the tone.
I think President Trump can say he feels and how he feels about it. Witnesses say has been quite very much looking at which is exactly what we need.
Priority now business
I wonder whether you think that whether you think that he is going whether you think that so we're now hearing from sources that President Trump is taking the discussion. You think President Trump should go ahead? Is that on President Putin?
What we know is the word. Coaches and Saudis, so that in visas, on the buffer and when it's the same strategy, even though other polling are controlled, the other polls shows that there is a high level of concern for inflation, the numbers of those who have been killed or wounded, should be a million this month. So then the pressure cooker is on. So adding to the pressure is indeed the right way because the history shows that the deals
can be struck at those moments when Russia's imperialistic goals are limited. It's and Russia is not in that type of it's going to be India. The Russians are killing already. Going into Russian countries, aliens and gas and services for keeping money frozen and putting social advantage because again, that is a secret way from one hand, but also the most protecting thing.
Let me turn to Gaza for a moment, if I know, because today you would have seen these comments we had from the European Commission Secretary Ursula von der Leyen. He said that the Israeli offensive in Gaza and her work was abhorrent. We've heard similar comments and similar language from Chancellor German, Chancellor Merkel, and we've had the UK, Canada and France, as you all know, threatening to take place soon. And then we reviewed ties with Israel over its actions in Gaza, and this is the trade and separation agreement. Which would have been a stand for you?
We had a many conversation about the situation and the EU foreign minister. There's a list of points that we all agree on, which is indeed Israel does have the right to all the time after the 7th of October attack, but it does have the right to try to eliminate military and to make sure that there is no threat to security. But also Israel does obligations under international humanitarian law. And very clearly at this time and place of happening, providing aid to women, children, vulnerable to those suffering, without risking the sort of empowering command is possible. So in my view, Israel should do everything possible to ensure that innocent people don't die. And that is our we believe in Israel's own interest, because again, humanitarian solution really alongside Israel. So we genuinely we are going to play big communities here, also big community there, and in the sense quite clearly, while Israel tries to defend itself very specifically, academic stories for happening in
Foreign Minister, we appreciate you taking your time to speak for us. Thank you very much, Foreign Minister.
President Trump's big beautiful bill, it was entitled to the U.S. Senate after nearly 3 and but the sweeping past domestic bill policy is already facing some pushback from some Senate Republicans. Some concerned about the potential impact in debt, Medicaid, and the tax credit level. Trump has already acknowledged that fairly significant changes could be coming.
I think they're going to very good. Some will be, some will be fairly significant. We've been working with that all the way up. We've been working together. And Speaker's been working with the leader of the Senate. You know, they've done a great job.
Jen Sullivan breaks down what's in the bill and the challenges for the cases in the Republican-led session.
What else? Never we pass a spending bill for this is legislation could be modified by the Senate. Donald Trump, calling it the big beautiful bill, focuses on flattening taxes and federal spending.
We're talking over $1.5 billion in federal.
$135, maybe two. I can get it, the All-American League of People in my life. This is great to have you on. Really this idea for payback. Hey, thanks for having me. Sure. And it was from the likes of our new master magazine, I want to see you know, and if you want USC a couple weeks ago, it felt like, you know, connection to the spirit of what rock and roll and that whole like non-denominational gathering, we love the music to create. And it's been gone so long for us to be 30 feet away up on a great tower, trying to connect to an audience. And this is a way to have embraced that spirit again. So do we have to experience? Are you then surprised at all by that? It's mine. I have been humbled and continued shut down in, I don't know, if you went with 12 people on a 40 field floor at a park, you could pitch the grand of our money together and said, let's just put this that on people coming. And I mean, this is a tree that is thinking on top of each other. They're all younger than us, and it's hungry, they're setting up these stages, we're catching trees, hitting you, coming so close to not just like out of here. And this moment for the Gen Z crowd, we are the drivers of Europe in this game. It's a dream. I don't know if you know, Gen Well, we did in the zoo. We got the top called on the graduation day. The top 10, they shut us down before we played our last song. And I walked out and played it hard. Right? And so, really, and I walked up to the conference and they said, listen, you want you to get out of the zoo. You know, and it was a great show. So, I imagine right? Because music is music. We're high school for him. That's our age difference here. But it's
it was at a really important time of that we were hearing a lot of these, and I wonder if that police officer, I bet he was too. That was.
It's younger. You know, it doesn't even, I wouldn't, of course, yeah, that's sort of been a byproduct of it, but I think for our band, it was, we were, you know, the songs that had the band when we came up, we never really had the culture, we got linked into this sort of definition of emo, and then when pop punk was a thing, but our songs were always sort of the driving force of the trajectory of our band, but now we feel like we're tying all the music together because we put it out for like a decade of the 2000s. It feels like several rounds. It has all these, and that feels that's how Revelation is. And you have to have a pretty good yard, I think. It's really important to that city. In Ames, Iowa. It's a beautiful place that was like contemporary, and 5,000 people. It looks like the end of the train. It's 10 miles of cars stretched out in that direction and people running from farm people. I mean, this is a cinematic experience in every word. And it's broken. It looks amazing. I have one last question, really speculating on it, and hoping not just for us, but for fans and listeners. What is this song you make? Who is it about? Can you clarify that for us? Is it a friend? Oh man, I saw that video of the lady. No, it's not. It's theme song. Maybe let's shut the door. It was about playing in a bit of a love for that running his girlfriend and I thought guitarist and we just kind of were playing around. The song was just a sweet little joke, but it's those are the things that happen, some sort of miracle of acceptance as a result. They're a favorite. Well, when you stuff that would have went, that would have said, yeah, right. That's another. So get ready, we just got a record come out in January, and maybe we'll see what the New Year's party. I hope it happens. I love it. All right, Jackson, thank you so much.
I do feel very sick. It's for the night. It's a big dollar. And we get it all together. Let's say that's it. To a New York City apartment. Fortunately, Finally gave us the passport, and that allowed us to look into the computer, which then gave they can to run it. We did just track down this and the what we were able to get away. But they want to what's the relationship in that? So many surely this thing is like some of the evidence that was found by that we had to put down on the victim. We saw bodies. John Wells was ordered
Pretty long, and the ruling. And you read it, you can take it in Swinner as an intentional visit. There was violations, based on research and based on some historic case earlier mistakes and there's a based on the I think it's there. Not only feel that people still agreement and negotiation like that, but I don't think it's important. It's not more fair. Now there's the period. The other thing I'd say is I agree, maybe the most because it doesn't not great. So he's going to kind of He's an incredible how Artie in the ball, picking off the bounce, and he was also somebody who's in the focus as he proved to great getting more on it, more variety on his game. And the game movement, you look at the ball, very good. It's going to make results, movers. And I think he improved his ability to respond to the theory. It's really hurt. And he was really different. And he's still up and down on that. He's pretty focused. It can also be a favorite. But I don't think today is his best purpose. They're on hard courts, obviously, and I think he wouldn't move and just it's around and it's not good. Very fresh. He's in one area. He's like I think it's not really good. He has the right mutual face. He really had a great second. For me, this stage, he plays his best. That's some injuries. Anyways, wants to be. He puts his body in position. He doesn't really had that sort of look, body of work, thinking about the areas coming from Turkey, making it happen. It's all in the favor. Younger areas here, and there are people who are sort of very much. He's amazing. Economic.com. I like to get look at today. Takes the result to the next level. It's 79.95. So that MDF paving is current today. MDF
Just about reshoring. You will one point. Southeast Asia. We're seeing Vietnam's going to win the trade. There's a huge amount of dependency on export to the U.S. Not a lot of negotiation for countries like Vietnam, but where there is space is countries that have the labor costs. So again, India and parts of Southeast Asia score well on that. There's countries that don't currently have a lot of dependency on the U.S. Money to increase their manufacturing capacity. We have metrics by which their production centers into other countries. But I think the unfortunate issue is that uncertainty regarding the actual tariff numbers does delay some of these decisions. I do think that there is slow migration, slow diversification of the supply chains to make global trade much more resilient. And companies that are been doing that with travel and several of those more successful in terms of equity price or earnings guidance because of their thinking about this reshoring and diversification of supply chains. Once we were supposed to have more peace in our country, was it going to price of 35% tariffs to 30%?
You were personally afraid and feared for the safety of your staff as well as everything. You feel that everything has been taken. Earlier we gained this. We believe that there in the city of New Orleans, about the next security around the courthouse, for jurors, for witnesses, for associates. This is going to the jurors, and we're going to make and do their the New Orleans sheriff, Hudson, waited maybe a week to have a scene of the jailbreak process by Crime Lab technicians. He said that Killen did so with the reflection of this. What is that? Second delay have, and why do you think there was never a reflection? Performance you think you never serve. That's your job. Everything's for other people. By the people we in terms of tariff change control, with your only job. This morning, somebody started shooting people. With your sheriff department. Was there a conspiracy that was all planned? Record, video, thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate you coming and during your private. Public logic, private and rocket, 3 to 10, President. North Korean state media, all the time, all the things right? Because of criticism, they don't start still. The detail of that is that now will work and then it's false. Well,
The friendly handshakes feel like a distant memory. North Korea is blasting President Donald Trump's planned Golden Dome space shields, calling it an outer space nuclear war scenario, according to U.S. strategy for unipolar domination, a typical product of America first, the height of self-righteousness, arrogance, for the world, not just from coming on. Also, China made its own rapid military building. Beijing warned the Golden Dome would violate the principle of peaceful use of outer space, but not in a dangerous space arms race. From China to North Korea to Russia, someday Iran. The list of America's nuclear arms President Trump's Golden Dome opened no and expensive state, but it contains $170 billion. Israel's huge in the same state in Portland, the country of New Jersey. Golden Dome was try to steal the near U.S. shooting down nuclear missiles until they reach Earth. Experts say the technology was pulled off doesn't exist. Not yet. The French has the ability to do it. This defense company, Martin, says, we will bring in the and right American innovation, rapidly develop game-changing tech, like space-based interceptors, hypersonic defense, that will ensure American Golden Dome stays well ahead of adversary threats. And destroy the ICBM Red fight back against. Despite hundreds of billions of dollars for research and development, going back more than 4 decades to President Ronald Reagan in 1983, I know this is a dominant technical case, one that may not be accomplished before the end of this century. No U.S. missile defense system has ever been proven effective against a realistic, large-scale intercontinental ballistic missile attack, especially when involving modern ICBMs with decoys, multiple warheads.
There is a historical research there to what we're seeing when it is Star Wars during the Reagan administration. There are echoes of that program and what's being proposed.
President Trump's Golden Dome is a bold promise.
What have done in about 3 years, and you have the best system ever.
The critic warns it may also be a perilous pipe dream, escalating tensions with U.S. adversaries, not just on Earth, but in space. New Ripley, Canada, okay.
Do you think there is some kind of sense inside the White House or with the left wing that Russia's not looking to do it in some country and they haven't since some brilliance?
Well, it could also be that he really thinks he's got a pump on the run, that despite the bluster about sanctions or other steps, Putin still thinks he's got the advantage. And there's an interesting name that's come out of the stock market, looking at Trump's back and forth on tariffs. Tariffs are on, tariffs are and market changes, Trump changes, tariffs, they call it, it's possible, which stands for Trump always chicken and So if you're the Kremlin watching the Taco trade at work, it doesn't, you're not going to be intimidated by Trump's threats. You're going to say, as Dmitry Peskov, Putin press spokesman did today, you're going to worry about something really serious, worry about World War III.
What's the verse of the, which is that compass Superman and it goes, we going back and forth on how it's going to go. And that's what.
Sure, no, I'm sure that's right. The two-way conversation they had last week, at least according to Yuri Yushakov, former Russian ambassador to Washington and now an aide to Putin, was it was very amicable. Neither one really wanted to end the call. I don't think that's broken yet. I think Trump's used bad publicity to Trump when Putin and the Russians are bombing civilian targets in Kyiv, and that's part of what's motivating him. That doesn't guarantee follow-up action.
What could Trump do if he did decide to censor kind of removing out there with people? Want to put sanctions in Russia. They have made very clear they probably want to bring out some effort to see if they're actually going there with it. But is there something you could do that would be consequential for Putin in this moment?
Well, in the legislation is pending in Congress, secondary sanctions against purchasers of Russian oil would be authorized. So China, India, other countries that are purchasing oil, probably in violation of U.S. and EU sanctions, could be the target. However, I must say, sanctions have largely failed to prevent Russia from continuing the war. The European package they're considering is their 17th package of sanctions. Now, one question is, if they could find that many sanctions, why weren't they imposed in February of 2022 when the war started? This kind of gradual escalation of economic sanctions obviously doesn't work, and the Russians are making it. I think I would go for the secondary sanctions and really get tough, including saying to NATO, we've wasted 3 years not supplying military assistance in a strategic fashion. You have been deterred by these Russian threats of a wider war. That's over. We can feel confident for Ukraine. I don't have to do it, but that's the right thing to do. White, wider people, all right,
what some of these details are and how this figures into the structure. So much for that.
After trying I can not be really linking. Even in the Vermont, many people really well. It's not like it. In PSA, and we still do all. When we can know evidence of
All can companies showing the group. That's really it's policy. The company merger statements, it's long goes to being indeed, we might say that so because you know, and you go up, you pull down the side, you go up. Now, the thing is, constant to errors. I mean, what you do and then
right now. collectively.
This is a very your commitment analogy. I think all these eight swing states in the US, we are the ones doing it. If we want to bring our remember, we US put up being in the US. So we are to talking about and the other thing is social media question, the U.S. president, a lot of it included other people. Me, or we love it. I think it's our boy, I'm was burning that. Right away with aerial attacks. Now it's doing great. Although we memorandum of peace, laying out the time for suicide is the it's very waiting. It's looking.
And here's what we're going to have that continues to work in the job memorandum in the defining a number of positions, such as principles of settlement, defining of a possible peace agreement, and potential ceasefire, for restoring the appropriate agreement.
President Donald Trump once again last night at Russian President's gathering of meeting with friends and communities playing with fire. We have heard a bit of background with exactly the president has shifted his tone with the Russian president in the situated attacks, associated and situated attacks against Putin and Ukraine. And the two leaders had the same decision, there's another reason as well. This is saying that in that phone call that Donald Trump had with Vladimir Putin just a week ago, this bonus is when and we can post a memorandum of peace. Essentially, lay out the existing requirements for a Ukrainian peace that would be benefited the U.S. and Ukraine in coming days. This is saying that even though no part of that was seen in the memorandum, has added to the frustration of that is that we talked about administration. We know and to help the Russian interest that not the United States would house and the missionary the two countries have these things inside. They also reiterated to deliver the obviously we are saying that Donald Trump is situating when it comes to that rhetoric around the Russian president as well as the potential that we are trying to turn a pursuit from Vladimir Putin. Personally, yes.
It depends on the there are theoretically president several have been in favor of the tariffs and they were having American-made apparel. That's a manufacturing company that produces clothing for college bookstores nationwide. President and owner Sonny Kim is joining me now. And Sonny, the argument from Trump administration officials for these tariffs in part is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. from abroad. You work in manufacturing here in the United States. You're still being impacted by the tell us about your experience.
But eventually down, there's going to be somewhere along the line. I mean, sure, let's say if I'm trying to source fabric from California, there's a mill that's located there. They themselves have to use yarn, use bodies from China to make cotton sheets. And that is an unclaimed process in dairy from my point. So somewhere along the line, supply chains over many years, obviously that it's time to get used to working with people and establishing pricing that's set. Those are all being affected now.
So how are you handling that? Are you being forced to raise prices for your customers?
So the insurance trying to hedge against so much difference in price, so a lot of the product that I'm carrying are fabric and trends, just so that people now, hopefully, if these prices keep going up, you really don't know. It's kind of a week. So I'm having to hold my back. I was trying to get that wholesale up, you retail up for them, they're getting rich from some part of it.
Are the tariffs actually translating into demand for years? Because the frankly, theoretically, that's depends on.
So we need to
Or should be, so that the big years that as we grow of this.
So we're up against this very are paid. Our skilled worker on my end, I might be paying $18 per hour. If I'm on the line, for tiny showers, it's only the same thing. So it's quite one use that. Work with part of that. I do land some products that are from certain USDA. Even on the consumer level, have to expect that we're paying more for it. If you look at it, so the key test would have to be at the consumer level, are they willing to pay higher prices for potentially the same product?
Right. Company is called American Parent in Denver, Colorado, and this is study here. So much for your time. I hope you folks don't mind slumming it. The humble abode of course really United States. And smartest men in America, and literally have in Cornwell, in into his attitude in the scene of Miller really this instinct for his company, for his own profile, for himself, well, in himself and the mental health and it's kind of rare, and maybe this is the community that their state of news and schools, and people are using those for various purposes. We could actually do this.
There. Resistance is not still close. Systematic mindset can let's add another expert voice to the conversation. Joining us now is Stephanie. People are hesitant to bearish on resistance is
I think it's going to be part of the reality TV show couple that has been convicted.
There's still opportunities for seeing actually 10 years, 2020 was 19 times. You guys have said we really are. The opportunities. That's why I said that we
So now I was kind of like, I did.
Really good.